Psalm 139. And I just, well, she got them, didn't she? I had somebody's keys up here. I was just going to hold them up and say, if you're planning on going home, you're going to have to see me tonight. That was you. We'll make sure we get the keys to you. We want to make sure you get home. Psalm 139. It is a psalm inspired by the Lord to David. But David is not the subject of this psalm. It is not about him. It is not about anybody or anything but the Lord. And in these short verses, it is a revelation of how great our God is. How could you put it into these short verses? And how could we ever understand it as long as we're in this earth? It's going to take a new body, a new mind to fully comprehend the greatness of our God. If you were to travel down to Atlanta, Georgia, they have what is called the Omni Hotel. When they first opened up the Omni Hotel in Atlanta, they had our convention down there, so Miriam and I and some other pastors went down for our convention, and we were fortunate to get a room in the Omni Hotel. There are 450 rooms in that one hotel and suites. They have meeting rooms where they can accommodate 2,000 people at one time. I found out after I got there why they call it the Omni Hotel, because if you got on top of that hotel, they had a revolving restaurant right on the top. And when you sat down to eat your meal, you took a little journey. You set your table, and that top of that hotel revolves. And they call it the Omni Hotel because you get a full view of Atlanta and other facilities. And if it's on a clear date, you can see other states because you are getting a full view of everything from that perspective. Well, when we open our Bible to Psalm 139, it is a full view of our God. We cannot see all of Him at one time. We cannot comprehend all that He is at one look. We need a full view of our God. And in this Psalm 139, I have called this psalm, well, you could call it by many names. It reveals to us the omni attributes of our God. A full view of who our God is. And I'd ask Kay for us to sing that hymn, How Great Thou Art. And we're singing it down here. Can you imagine how it's going to sound when we get to heaven? And I think when we see Him face to face, and we have a perfect body and perfect voices, and we see Him in all of His glory, I promise you we're going to exclaim to Him, how great Thou art. And what we knew down here and what we learned about it down here is so limited, not because He is limited, but because we're limited. Our mind cannot comprehend everything about Him. And you cannot talk too much about Him. And I sort of feel like when the Queen of Sheba went to see Solomon and all of his riches, and she saw all the things that he had possessed, she left there saying, the half has not yet been told. And I think when we open our Bible to get a revelation of God, and we come to get a view of who He is, and the best of our ability try to comprehend the greatness of our God, we have to say the half has not yet been told. There's a threefold doctrine that is taught in the Bible about God. By the way, you do know this is a book about Him, don't you? I mean, there are a lot of other things in there, but this Bible is a revelation of our God. And if you want to know Him, want to know who He is, you want to know what He's like, then you have to open up this book and get a view of all that God is. We need that omni view of Him, not just one aspect of Him, but somehow we need to know everything we can comprehend about Him. Here are some terms that are used to describe God. I want to say this by way of introduction tonight, just to say a few words about the greatness of our God. There is the word that we use from time to time, the omniscience of God. God is omniscient. Now that means that God knows everything. There is not one thing that God does not know. God has never learned anything. You cannot tell God anything that He does not know. I'm glad that we can tell God, we can talk to God, but sometimes we talk to God as if God did not know what we're talking about. I will assure you He knows. He knows everything. And when the Bible emphasizes the knowledge of God, could I remind you that we are servant of God who knows everything. In fact, in this psalm, the psalmist said, God, you know my uprising, you know my downsitting, you know where I am, you know what I'm doing. There is nothing hid from God tonight. Now, as a believer, that ought to be a source of comfort to you, because no matter where you are, what you're going through, God knows where you are. He is omniscient. He knows everything. There's another revelation of God that's revealed in this psalm and other places in the Bible. He's not only omniscient, He knows everything, but He is omnipresent. That means God is everywhere. In fact, the psalmist said, Lord, where can I go to get away from your presence? Where can I hide from you? He said, if I rise with the wings of the morning, I fly all day and get to the end of the day. And he said, when I get there, God, you're there. Even if I go and make my bed in the very presence of hell, you are there. God is everywhere. And I want to tell you, He's everywhere at the same time. He doesn't have to leave me to come to you. He knows where you are tonight. He knows where I am tonight, because He's God. He is all-knowing. He is everywhere. And this word omnipotent. He is all powerful. He has all the power. In fact, Jesus said that all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. I want to tell you, if there is any power, it is our God that is powerful tonight. He doesn't have to get power from somewhere else. He's powerful in and of himself. We ask the Father to give us power, to give us the strength. But I want to tell you, there's never been a time, never will be a time, that God is short on power. There are no power shortages with Him. He doesn't run out of power. He is all-knowing, and He's everywhere, and He's all-powerful. When you're weak, He's strong. I've just come to tell you about our God tonight, who our God is. And all three of these revelations is found in this psalm. We often, sometime when we're preaching or talking, we talk about what God can do, but we forget about what God is like. I'm telling you, He's able to do what He can do because He is who He is. Now, there's some in this day think that anything and everything is God. But the Bible does not say that. This Bible that you possess tonight is a record and a revelation of who our God is, and He is all that He has claimed to be. I've heard a lot of things said about God, but I'm just going to tell you, God is who He revealed Himself to be. And the idea that a lot of people got about God, you've heard them, you hear them every day, but I'm going to tell you the only sure and sufficient record of God is how He revealed Himself in this Word. This Word is a record, and it is also a revelation of our God tonight. And so I didn't come, and when we come to worship, it's not to come to brag or boast on anybody, but to brag on who God is. Who is He? Listen to what the psalmist said. Verse 1. O Lord, Thou hast searched me and known me. There's a revelation in that passage of the knowledge of God. Lord, Thou hast searched me and You know me. Thou knowest my down sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and You are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, Thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid Thine hand upon me. No wonder he said this statement, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain unto it. Brother, I feel that way when you come into the presence of God. We are made aware, first of all, and confronted with the omniscience of God, the knowledge that God has. He uses words like, Lord, You are acquainted with my ways. Your knowledge is too wonderful for me. 5 times in these verses, he is emphasizing what God knows. You ever stop to think about what God knows? He is the first and the only know-it-all. Now, I've met a lot of people over the years that thought they knew it all. And they'd tell you they know it all, but they don't know it all. But I'm telling you, when you come in the presence of God and you deal with God, you are dealing with the one who knows everything. Can I say 2 or 3 things about this omniscience of God that's revealed in this passage? Do you know that God never lacks knowledge? He never lacks any knowledge. I will assure you that no matter how smart you are in this building tonight, none of us know everything. Our knowledge is partial. Our knowledge is incomplete. We're constantly learning and growing in our knowledge. But can I remind you tonight that God knows it all. He never has learned anything. Problem is, we never learn anything. God never has a need to learn anything. And you can't tell God something he doesn't already know. He already knows everything. He does not lack any knowledge. He's full of knowledge from the very beginning. He hadn't lost any. He had never learned anything. You cannot teach God. You cannot help God to learn anything. God, our God is a God who knows it all tonight. I'm aware we have the privilege to talk to God and tell Him about things going on as if God doesn't know. And sometimes I pray and I talk, God, do you know this? Well, I'm here to declare, oh yeah, He knows about it. He already knows. Aren't you glad we can tell Him anyway? But it's not to educate Him. It's just to tell Him, Lord, we got a need, and we just want you to know that we know what our needs are. He never has learned anything. God has never, according to this passage, He does not lack any knowledge. He never grows in knowledge because He's always known everything. And by the way, not only does He not lack knowledge, He has never learned any knowledge. Oh, brother. Sometimes we treat God like poor old God. He's not in what's going on in my life. He doesn't know. I need to educate Him. I'll tell you, you can't tell God He doesn't already know. He has never learned one thing because He's known it all from the beginning, and He'll know it all when we're all gone. I'm just telling you about our God who does not lack anything, and He never has learned anything. And brother, here's something. Do you know our God never loses anything? I don't even have to ask you tonight. Do you ever forget anything? Let me look you over and see if you're going to tell me the truth. Did I ask you, do you ever lose anything? Did I ask that? I forgot, did I ask you that? Do you ever lose anything? I mean, your knowledge sometime. We're so like the woman who came out of the store. She went to get in her car. And when she got in the car, she felt kind of unusual. And she called 911. And they came and she told them on the call, somebody's stolen my car. And they said, well, how do you know that? She said, well, there's no steering wheel in it. And my foot pedal is gone. And they stole the drink holder out of my car. I know it's not my car. All of that stuff's missing. They said, we'll send somebody out to you. And when they drove up, they found out she is sitting in the back seat of the car. She wasn't sitting in the front seat. Now listen, I get mad every once in a while, but I ain't never climbed in the back seat and thought I was in the front seat. I mean, some of these things just sort of, we lose them, don't we? Has your wife or husband ever told you, just told me that 30 minutes ago? Well, tell me again. I want to tell you, you never have to go to God, and God ever said to you, you told me that the other day. Now, you don't have to, he never loses anything you tell him. You can tell God, and he'll remember it 10 years from now. He never has lacked anything. He's never lost anything. In his knowledge and his understanding, I'm just telling you how great our God is. Here's three things that are simply stated in these opening verses about our God. The knowledge of God. The omniscience of God. When you hear somebody preach on that, the omniscience, you know they're talking about the knowledge of God, what God knows. Here it is, three things I want to say. God knows who we are. Listen to it. Verse 3, the psalmist. Thou compasseth my paths and my lying down. You are acquainted with all my ways. God knows who I am. And God knows who you are. I know who you are. You know who I am. But nobody knows me any better than God knows me. And nobody knows you any better than God knows you. He knows, he's acquainted. That word acquainted, he has full knowledge. Somebody says, I'm going to go tell God some things about you. Well, go ahead and tell him. He already knows it anyway. You can't tell him anything he doesn't know, as if God's going to be surprised and say, well, I didn't know that. Now, I say that a long time. I didn't know that. God never has scratched his head and said, I'm glad you informed me and told me about this. I just didn't know that. I'm here to tell you, God knows who you are tonight. You're not just a number out there somewhere. God knows who you are. When I say that, I mean that God knows every moment of my life. He said, Lord, you know. You know the way I walk. You know where I have to walk. You know the way I talk. Thou knowest me altogether, he says. I may have others fooled, but I promise you, I can never fool God about who I am because he already knows it. And here's the amazing thing, and the reason I ought to be rejoicing tonight, God knows everything about me and still loves me. That's the reason I ought to be happy, is because Jesus loves me and knows everything about me. Isn't that people, you kind of like people until you find out some things about them. And you change your mind and your opinion about them. Don't look at me like I've never done that. Oh, yeah, you're human just like I am. And the more you find out about me, you say, well, I thought there's something a little fishy about that. Do you know God knows everything about you, what you think, where you walk, how everything about you? And he says, I love you. My love has never changed. He knows who we are. Your second revelation about God. He not only knows, according to this psalm, in fact, the psalmist said, thou knowest, verse 2, my down sitting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. God knows when I'm up, and God knows when I am down. And it doesn't change God one bit. Are you aware that doesn't change God's mind about you? Now, to be honest, you be honest. Are we being honest with each other tonight? There are just some days. Let me look you over real good. There are just some days you feel like saying to your wife or your husband or your family, it'd be best for you to kind of stay away from me today. Don't talk to me today. I know some of you got wings tonight. Some of you got your wings all out there. You're ready to fly away. Just take them off when we come here tonight. There are some days we're not lovable. Helping you out there. Some days we just don't. We're up and some days we're down. But I'm here to tell you, God knows the days I'm up and God knows the days I'm down. And it doesn't change Him about me one bit. That changes us, don't it? But it doesn't change God. He knows. He knows who we are. Could I tell you, according to this passage, God not only, I'm talking about the knowledge of God. That's why we're preaching about that. The omniscience of God. The knowledge of God. What does God know? I've heard people tell me, now if you really knew that person, you wouldn't really like them. If you knew them, they've got you fooled. I will assure you tonight, we don't have God fooled and He still loves us. Ah, brother, God knows who you are. And you may feel like, well, I'm going to tell God about you. Well, just help yourself because He already knows more than you know about me. Some people got the idea, I'm going to tell God something He don't know about you. Brother, He already knows everything about you. That's how great God is. He knows who we are. He knows every moment of our life. Here's an interesting thing. God not only knows who we are, but God knows where we live. He says, God, you are acquainted with all my ways. The term there is, God, you know my address. You got my zip code. You know where I am living. I am not hid from God. When I get on a side road and get somewhere where I think I've gotten away from God, I will assure you, God knows where I am. He knows every moment of our life. And God knows every movement in my life. Would it surprise you? According to this passage, God knows when you sit down. God knows when you get up. God knows when you go to bed. You said, now, preacher, I'm not so sure about it. Oh, yeah, He knows that. He knows when you get up. They don't need somebody to call you about 11 o'clock in the middle of the day and you're just crawling out of bed and they said, did I get you up? Oh, no, I've been up since daybreak. Well, why you won't tell them that? God knows all of that. I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody, and you surely cannot hide it from the Lord. He knows. He knows who I am. and He knows where I am. Every movement He knows about it. God is so knowledgeable. He knows who we are. He knows where we live. And I just want to tell you, He knows what we say. Listen to it. Verse 2, he says, Thou knowest my downsitting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts afar off. Do you know before the words ever get in your mouth and out of your mouth, God already knows what we're thinking? And in fact, verse 4 said, There is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it all together. Boy, isn't that startling? That He has so much knowledge, He knows. He knows everything. Our thoughts before we ever think them. Thou knowest, He said. My thoughts, my words, whatever I say. You think nobody heard it? Could I tell you about a God who's so great? He not only hears what we say with our tongue, He knows what's in our mind before it ever gets into our mouth. Two times in the Gospels, it was said of Jesus, He knew their thoughts. Before they ever said anything, Jesus knew what they were thinking. Boy, isn't that a sobering thing tonight? He knows what you're thinking right now. With this group of people, I am sure there's somebody saying, well, preacher, hurry and get through that one point. And do you know my stomach's getting, you don't tell me that. God already knows that. Y'all look at me like, do you know you're preaching to the saints tonight? I'm saying God knows every thought, everything we think. God, you know it. Whatever we say. No wonder the psalmist said, verse 6, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is just too high. It's over my head. I cannot attain into it. I sort of feel that way when we're talking about how great God is. Boy, He's bigger than I can understand. He's greater than I can attain in my little mind and in my heart. How big, how great is our God. The omniscient. He knows every move I make. He knows every motive that I have. He knows every moment of my life. And according to this passage, He knows every maneuver that I make in my life. According to verse 5, Thou hast beset me behind and before. You've laid your hand upon me. God knows every bit of that. You say, preacher, you have stated that. Well, I'm just here to say it again. Can't say it too much. God is great. So that's why when we come, we sing and preach about God. None of the other stuff really matters, does it? But when I go to church, I want to hear about how great my God is. How great God is. All I can tell you is, we serve a mighty God tonight. He knows everything. He has all knowledge. He never does anything and say, well, I wish I hadn't done that. He never has to look back and say, well, I didn't think about that. No, I'm going to tell you, whatever God does, it's on full revelation and full knowledge. That's how great and mighty our God is. And all I can say tonight is what a mighty God we serve. What a great and a mighty God we serve. There was a monarch over a kingdom that the whole land had respect for. And when he died, they took his body into this great cathedral, rolled the casket down to the front. And the only lights that were on, they were shining down on that casket. The only thing visible in that large facility was a casket sitting there with the spotlights on it to honor the greatness of their leader. They sung a few hymns, and then the man of God came out and walked to the pulpit. Everybody was on edge, and they wanted to find out, what is this man going to say about our great leader? Is he going to brag about how great he was and how good he was and what he'd done for our nation? And we've come to honor him and almost worship him. Now we're gathered here. We want to know what's to be said about this great man. And the man of God walked to the podium and said, "Only God is great." And he went and sat down. I'm here to tell you tonight, only God is great. And when we all get to heaven, we're going to see how great he is. We're going to behold him in all of his glory. How great our God. Psalmist said, could I just tell you about the greatness of God? I'll just give you a little preview of who he is. God revealed to us who he is, what he can do. The entire psalm is about him. And I just tell you, the entire Bible is about him. If you want to know him, if you want to get acquainted with who we serve, just open it up. He's there. He's in every book. He's there. You'll run into him. How great thou art. Would you like to stand with me tonight? Just stand with me. All the other things we say about God. He loves us. His compassion, his patience, all these other attributes. The only thing I can tell you, he is great. He is great. He's greater than the greatest. He's higher than the highest. Nobody can get up to where he is because he's God. And the greatest day in my life when I learned he was God and I was not God. You know, some days we want to tell him we're God. I found out he's God, I'm not. He doesn't belong to me, I belong to him. He's on the throne. I'm not on the throne. He's God.